I think a lot of the decisions in the early days had more to do with just necessity. But to answer that question clearly, adding that next person was particularly personal because keeping in mind that I was almost running away from an industry that is very much known for overworking folks and
Yeah.
underpaying folks. And so one of the decisions that was particularly personal for me was that if I was in a position to be able to even afford to bring on a third person, that I wanted to make sure that we created a business that could sustainably pay that person and pay that person a respectable salary. Of course, we're paying tech salaries at the time, but just something that was respectable. That was a particularly important thing, for me. And I think in just general, like I've always believed that, and I'm coming from a little bit of a trauma where I remember after graduate school, we worked for incredible firms. On the door, you'd have these incredible brands,
Hmm.
but what we were actually getting paid as a kind of entry level architect, just not sustainable. And so I promised myself is if I were ever to do my own thing, I would want to build a business that was sustainable enough where you didn't have to like exploit folks' time, and it could afford to pay people what I believe they're worth. So I think that was just a general framework. I think naturally, though, there is a tension, which is that's an aspiration, but the realities of business, they're a lot more grim, especially in the early days where,
Hmm.
I think I shared this with you, but when I started the company, I naively thought that $12,000 in my savings account was enough to afford me a buffer in New York City to buy me about 6 months of time.
Yeah.
Woefully wrong and woefully miscalculated back. It was more like 2 months time, but I think as part of that calculation, it number one forced me to have an appreciation for okay, there's the promised land is like what we'd like to build, but there's also a reality of like rent being due, and that saying you've heard me talk about just having appreciation for making sure that you can make that first dollar
Yeah.
and ideally quickly forces you to create a framework where it's like, okay, well, there's what I would like to do, but I also have to pay rent. So what are folks needing like today? And ideally, I could solve that in a way that gets me at least a step closer to where I think the industry should go.